You're listening to Straight Outta WAC.
Quickly, Dixon up high. Oh, that's
7% from the floor, 12 of 21 in this game. Nottage, two-handed dunk with a little bit of finesse.
And it was about the positioning right there and a great lob pass. Oh, and McCann's right back up the floor. New Mexico State.
You can define a perfect season in many ways. For the Lancers, it is profound and resolute. California Baptist, undefeated, unblemished, 24-0, and WAC tournament champions in Las Vegas.
Here's your host, Kyle McDonald.
Hey everyone, welcome to our first live stream of the year, I guess. Just testing this out. The Pardon Me Alex podcast girls kind of got me hooked on the live stream on the StreamYard, so we're just testing things out right now. With me is my good friend Derryl Trujillo, who has helped build WAC Hoops Digest with his content, especially covering the women's side of WAC Hoops. Derryl, let's hope that your internet connection tonight is a little bit better than it was with the Pardon Me Alex girls.
Yeah, I kind of feel pretty bad about that one, but it looks like we've had a better day so far. I've got a late model race on in the background, and it looks like we're doing pretty good so far.
So tonight on this live stream, send us your questions. We're on Twitter right now. Send us your questions. We'll answer them best we can. First off, the news that came out today, the WAC reaches new expanded media rights agreement with ESPN. That's huge, especially the notion that ESPN will also televise select regular season men's basketball games. So not ESPN Plus, not ESPN 3 or anything like that. Actual ESPN platforms like ESPN, ESPNU, maybe ESPN2. To me, that's huge for this conference. And that I think that's part of what they were trying to do with bringing in the Texas 4 and Southern Utah. What do you think, Derryl? Oh, it's going in and out again.
All right, I'm going to take the race off the background and
You're good.
See if that gets us a little more bandwidth. All right.
So, anyways, like we were talking about, it was huge that they made this multi-year deal with ESPN. And the fact that men's basketball games are going to be broadcast on ESPN, maybe ESPN2 or ESPNU, but not just solely on ESPN Plus.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's huge for both sides of the ball, too. I mean, the men's get a little more exposure, but so does the women's side. And with the addition of those Texas 4, we just became a really, really good women's conference and a men's conference. And I think we might be a couple of years away from multiple NCAA bids on the men's, probably 5 to 7 years away on the women's side. We still got to get rid of some of the Chicago State stuff as they leave next year. But even on the women's side, I still think we're probably 4 to 5 years away from multiple bids. We're definitely within a couple years of multiple bids to multiple tournaments this year.
It's very possible because, I mean, obviously we have 13 teams. 2 of the schools can't participate in the postseason, Tarleton State, Dixie State, because they're still in their transition phase. But, yeah, I mean, there's a potential for 5-6 teams on both sides of the spectrum to play in a postseason tournament. I mean, I think that depending on what happens on the men's side, you know, if New Mexico State runs the table or, you know, I guess wins both the regular season and the WAC tournament, like it's kind of predicted by everybody right now, if Stephen F. Austin or Grand Canyon, if they have a solid season, 20-25 wins, they could possibly be in the NIT. I mean, there's so many possibilities with what this conference is all about right now. And plus to have games on national television, it's going to be great. I mean, it's just a huge, huge thing. As Jeff Hurd, who is retiring or resigning from being the WAC commissioner in January, I mean, what he's done to this point has stabilized the WAC for whoever his predecessor is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think let's take a look back at when Bakersfield left and where this conference would have been without the addition of the Texas Four. We'd still be struggling to field a viable conference tournament at Vegas this year with Dixie and Tarleton still in transition.
Yeah, I mean that was the big thing. I think that was the reason that they let CBU, or I shouldn't say let CBU. They made that decision. The Board of Trustees made that decision last year to allow transition teams to play in the WAC tournament in year 3, even though they wouldn't be able to play in the NCAA tournament. I don't know if the plan was in place then to add all these Texas schools in southern Utah. Like if they knew that was coming down the pike, maybe they didn't. But either way, Jeff Hurd has done an amazing job, and he's going to leave the WAC on a very, very high note. I'm hoping to get him on the podcast at some point, this year before he goes. But it's just when I read this deal, I mean, it's a multi-year, multi-platform media rights agreement with over 500 annual events on ESPN Plus. That's among all sports too. So that's huge, not just for basketball, but for all sports in the WAC.
Yeah, absolutely. Volleyball, basketball, baseball, softball. We're pretty strong across the board for mid-majors. I mean, in those sports. I mean, just look at the fact that CBU baseball has won 2 WAC titles in the two full seasons they've been in. CBU softball beat Fresno State in their first game out in Division I, and has been pretty competitive now with Mike Smith returning to the helm now. It's going to be good for exposure and recruiting in all of our sports, and I'm excited to see what it does.
If I'm old school, so I was watching ESPN back in the 90s when BYU, Utah, and all those schools were in the WAC still. They had those big Monday games, Super Tuesday. Maybe, just maybe, we might get to that point again at some point where a WAC game late at night, 8 p.m. tip-off Mountain Time is on Big Monday. I mean, those were huge games too. Sold-out arenas. I'm just looking forward to it. It's going to be great. Right now, we only have one viewer.
The return of WAC After Dark.
Like, where are our followers? Anyways, I didn't really market this live stream very well tonight, so I'm sorry about that. Working full-time. Derryl worked full-time as well besides the writing, so we're just trying to make a go of it right now. Let's talk about a couple other things came out today. Chicago State's schedule was released. Cougars will play 5 non-conference home games. Don't think that's ever happened. Last year, every single one of their games was on the road before they suspended their season. So that was huge. I want to see Chicago State do well. I talked to Athletic Director Elliot Charles a couple weeks ago, and he says there's a lot of big things that they're doing there on the south side of the Windy City. Hopefully, I know they're leaving the WAC after this year, and hopefully they'll find a home and can continue to build that. It's just I want them to be competitive. I mean, it'll help the WAC overall. But, I mean, it's just a tough place to win at Chicago State.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, look at what's happened there. They've been largely uncompetitive on the women's side. In volleyball, they actually placed a first-teamer on the preseason WAC team, which was kind of surprising to me. But, I mean, I don't know the WAC that well in volleyball, but just to see a Chicago State student-athlete on a first team was, I guess, a step in the right direction for a program that has largely struggled in the WAC since they joined. And I echo your wishes for them to find a home that not only they can compete in, but save a little money in terms of the travel budget, because their travel expenses just flying everywhere have to be astronomical.
Well, and if you notice on the conference schedule sheet that we've seen, they're kind of on their own with regard to traveling to places. They don't have that travel partner like everybody else does in this conference. So we'll see what they do. I mean, like I said, Elliot Charles made it seem like there's some big things going on, and some of the tweets I've seen, recently with Chicago State, how they're reaching out to the community and how they're trying to bridge that gap between their athletic department and their fans. I think it's huge, and we'll see what they do. I wouldn't be surprised if they shock some people this year. It's happened before, and who knows if it'll both on the men and the women's side. Like, don't count Chicago State out just because of their past. Anyways, let's get to our top 10 stories for 2021. This is what we came here on this live stream for tonight, as well as answering your questions. So if you have any questions, shoot them to us. Leave a comment on the stream. If you're leaving them on Twitter, we'll check them out here. I don't see any yet, but we'll get to those when they come. They'll show up right here on my screen. But let's get to the top 10 stories. If you haven't checked it out, I will share my screen with you so that you can see where we are looking at. I hope it works. I'm not sure. I haven't tried this out yet. Let's see if it works here. Let's see. Sorry, guys.
There we go.
Did that work?
Got it.
Okay.
Yep, you got it.
If you see it, I'll pull me and Derryl out of the picture so it's a little bit bigger. But anyways, here we go. This is the top 10 stories that we posted today on WACHoopsDigest.com. Chaotic 2021 season that saw some crazy things, but let's get started. Transfer portal madness, Derryl. I mean, we've talked about this quite a bit. It's just, I don't know. It's wild how many people are in the WAC from the transfer portal this year.
Oh, yeah. It was as I was going through the women's portal and looking at one of my recruiting websites for the women's side, I was blown away. And then when you think about the total number of student athletes nationwide in the portal for basketball, I think it's something like 1,300, 1,400 last time I heard. Okay, so on the women's side, we got a couple of big names. Amara Graham used the grad transfer rule and went over to Grand Canyon from UTRGV. But the biggest transfer of the offseason was Katie Scott, the freshman and newcomer of the year from the WAC out of Grand Canyon, heading over to Oral Roberts of the Summit League.
Yeah, it's crazy how that happens. On the men's side, I can't even count. I was trying to put it all together today, how many transfers have transferred into the WAC and how many have transferred out. I think we had a few less transfers this year than we did last year. But the names that came into the WAC this year, you got Cam Tyson up at Seattle, who just played in the Final Four with Houston. Savion Flagg down to Sam Houston. Holland Woods, Tayshawn Cherry, all those guys that transferred to GCU, the big 7-footer that came to California Baptist and others. There's so many that it's just not hard to keep track of, but it's just chaotic because it's almost like NBA free agency in a sense.
In a way, it is. It's which staff can put together the best recruiting pitch for those kids that they want to grab out, go and pluck out of the portal.
Yeah, I don't know. I love it in a sense. I know more kids want to play for the coach rather than necessarily the school. I'm kind of old school where I love the loyalty, where guys wanted to go to a certain school so they could beat up on another school. That was way back when, though. But yeah, transfer portal chaos. Just the amount of transferred. I think there was over 2,100 in the men's transfer portal this year. That's a crazy number. And it's still going on too. There's still guys in that portal that haven't signed somewhere. So it's just a wild, wild time.
And the thing we have to remember about the portal too is a kid may put their name in, but then they might return to school A.
It's true.
Now we haven't heard of any of that happening in the WAC, but it is a possible scenario.
Well, so Darian Trammell from Seattle, he tested the waters of the transfer portal, but ended up staying in Seattle to play for the Redhawks this year. I mean, Jim Hayford, when I talked to him, he was ecstatic about that because he said that was like their number one recruit to get him to stay in Seattle. And it's sometimes it happens where kids will stay home or stay in their original school instead of transferring. They maybe, I don't know, sometimes they test those waters and they realize the pasture's not greener, where they're at, and they want to stay, because they have that good setup. Mike just sent us a comment. He says the best teams will be the ones who actively recruit the portal. It's true. I mean, you can find the players that you need. You can find you can fill holes that are left on your roster. I mean, it's just the way that college basketball is these days because so many players transfer and so many good players transfer that that's just the way that the rosters are going to be. So thanks, Mike, for the comment. Everybody keep sending us your comments if you're following this. I know it's a little late, but we're going to keep going on our top 10 list. Derryl, talk to us about the COVID chaos.
Okay, COVID chaos. It was an interesting year on the COVID chaos front. As we mentioned before, Chicago State gave the men's team gave up the ghost. What was it? 8-9 games in.
9 games.
Lance Irvin had already announced that he would not coach the year due to previous medical issues. And then on the women's side, we had Dixie State giving it up. I don't even think they got to a handful of games. I think they played 3 games and then gave it up, citing concerns over COVID-19. So what we had was those 2 teams giving it up. We had some series altered and canceled. What was it? UTRGV went about
UTRGV
3 weeks.
Went like 3 or 4 weeks without a game. Seattle had a positive COVID test the day after playing Utah Valley, so they weren't able to finish that series. I mean, it was wild. And here's something chaotic that I should have put this in there. I didn't even think about it at the time, but COVID is the reason that the GCU women and Molly Miller, her team,
did not make the NCAA tournament.
I don't want to say it was that was one thing that would have helped them be in that position right there with Utah Valley for that 2 seed. They didn't get to play that Chicago State series because of COVID. And so that might have made a difference of who represented the WAC at the NCAA tournament on the women's side. So, I mean, it was just I tried to go down to Dixie like 2 or 3 times, and every time a COVID case popped up and canceled the game or canceled the series, and it was like, maybe I'm just, jinxing Dixie State. And so I told Steve Johnson this idea. I'm never going to ask to come down to a game the rest of the year. Had a trip to UTRGV all planned out to watch them play Grand Canyon. Was excited to go to South Padre Island. I've never been to McAllen. And then GCU had a positive test after they played New Mexico State in that, series there. So it's so disappointing. COVID is dangerous. It's, out there. It's causing problems. It's hopefully, we get to a point where it's not causing the same kind of problems this year. I don't know. It's a wild time right now.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I'm kind of curious to see what the protocols we'll be operating under are going to be as journalists. Are we going to have to? Is it going to be back to old school? Are we still going to operate off Zoom calls with coaches and players? I mean, that stuff is still yet to be hashed out, and we're 70. What is it? What did Rothstein say? 77 days from opening day, and that's going to feel like Christmas to all of us to be back to a traditional year of college basketball with home and aways and tournaments and all that stuff.
I don't know if it's going to be traditional or not. I want it to be, and right now it's looking like it's going to be. But I think with the Delta variant that's going on and mask mandates coming, I think there's going to be some hiccups along the way. Like I don't think we can deny that. Mike, to answer your question, they're still discussing that about requiring schools to be vaccinated before basketball season. I think most teams are to a high percentage of all their participants being vaccinated, but a source told me that they're still discussing whether they're going to require that. The conference is going to require that. So I don't have a straight up yes or no answer to that right now. I would probably, dare to assume that there's going to be things in place for that to happen, but I don't want to cause any, issues by saying yes or no. All right, Derryl, let's go to number 7. Dan Nielsen, Utah Valley women win their most conference games since joining the WAC this year in 2020-21, had 10 conference wins, and because of that, they got to represent the WAC at the NCAA tournament because they finished in second place in the regular season standings, and it was voted on prior to the season that if CBU won the WAC tournament, whoever finished in second place in the regular season standings would represent the WAC. So Utah Valley got that honor. And it's the first time they've been in the NCAA tournament since becoming a Division I program. So great accomplishment. I don't know that the way that they went in was the way that they wanted to go, but they got that experience. They got to play, the overall top seed Stanford. It's a big step forward for Utah Valley's women's basketball team, who's kind of been up and down, but Dan Nielsen has them on the right trajectory easily. And they return almost everybody from last season.
Yeah, as I wrote in the preview piece, a lot for Utah Valley to build on off that NCAA tournament appearance. But let's take a look at what might have been had GCU won the tiebreaker. Either way you look at it, either one of them would still have been a 16 seed. Either one of them would still have faced one of the big four. It just happened to be Stanford. And it got Utah Valley some name exposure on, the 4-letter network. I guess we can say ESPN now since the new rights deal has been announced. And that's going to help Utah Valley going forward. As you said, Dan Nielsen returns a large core of that group. 4 of his starters were in the top half of the WAC in minutes played a year ago. Mm-hmm. I think for me, I just want to see a little more depth out of the Wolverines to be considered a legitimate contender for the WAC crown with CBU, with SFA, with Grand Canyon.
Well, and they brought over now I can't remember. They brought over a BYU transfer who I think is going to offer a little bit more ball handling. So the ball's not always in Maria Carvalho's hand. Yeah, Talia White. She's a redshirt freshman guard who transferred over from BYU. She's going to take a lot of pressure off Maria Carvalho in the fact that she can handle the ball, bring the ball to the floor. And you saw that last year where there was a lot of turnovers because teams knew that, if they got the ball out of Maria Carvalho's hand, some bad things would happen for Utah Valley. So, but yeah, first NCAA tournament appearance for the Wolverines, was huge. And I mean, it's just a step in the right direction, especially now when you're getting into a conference that's just going to be even more difficult. We'll see where the road, leads them. But I think that Dan Nielsen has them in the right direction. Pretty simple, there.
Yeah. Kyle, can I ask you, how much play did that get in Orem over the course of the week leading into that game, that Utah Valley's women got into the NCAA tournament?
Quite a bit, but I don't want to say anything negative because I know that some people at UVU think I'm always negative about the Wolverines, which I'm not. I mean, there was a lot of pub, during the selection show, and there was a lot of pub, leading up to it, and some good stuff that led up to it. But I think that there was more that could have been done, and that's I'm not a marketing expert or anything like that, but as an alum at Utah Valley, I think there could have been more that was done. Maybe there was a watch party, I can't remember. But yeah, I mean, it's you just have to take it in stride. Utah Valley's a commuter school, so a lot of people just come to school to go to their classes and they leave to go back to their full-time jobs. So the fan base is still growing there. A lot of the fans too, or at least the students, are BYU fans that are just going to Utah Valley because they didn't get into BYU. So, I mean, there's a lot that they're fighting there to get more fans. So it's just a step in the right direction to get more fans to support the program and support athletics. And, we'll just have to see going forward what happens. Let's go to number 6, A Tale of Two Big Men. And if you weren't following along in WAC Hoops this year, you missed. I mean, and I point out these two because they set records that hadn't, they broke records this year. But there were some really good big men in the WAC in 2020-21. Gorjak Gak at CBU. Jeff O'Cherry, when he finally got healthy, was really good. Of course, there's Johnny McCants down at New Mexico State. Hunter Schofield had a solid season at Dixie State. I mean, there was good big men played in this year. But two stick out. WAC Player of the Year, Fardaws Amac, did something that no other player has done in over 40 years, and that's pull down 15 rebounds per game this season. He was a WAC Player of the Year, WAC Defensive Player of the Year, first team all WAC, all kinds of things. And then his counterpart in Asbjorn Midtgaard at GCU shot 70% from the field. Set the NCAA record for shooting percentage from the field. I mean, I shouldn't say set the record, but led the NCAA in shooting percentage. And this was a guy who only averaged about maybe 3 points over 66 games at Wichita State. So, that's a huge story in and of itself because these guys entered the transfer portal, they found a home, and they made a huge name for themselves at their new home.
And then in Midtgaard's case, Kyle, he parlayed that into a summer league opportunity with the Magic.
First Grand Canyon player to play in the NBA Summer League after one season.
Yeah, and that's got to be a huge cap in Bryce Drew's hat going forward.
Yep. Yeah. And these two had to bang it out for the WAC regular season title. Amac got the best of Midtgaard on Friday night. Midtgaard got the best of Amac on Saturday night, and they earned a share of that WAC regular season title. So, oh my goodness, it's just fun. These big guys that can play around the rim, that have skill, that you love to see it. And guys that make the most of that new opportunity. That's what you love to see about the transfer portal is guys that make the most of that new opportunity. And they did it as good teammates too. They weren't just all about themselves. They were about making their teams better.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And guys like Midtgaard getting their opportunities in the NBA Summer League, like Trevelyan Queen from New Mexico State, that's only going to help the WAC as we go forward with this new refurbished WAC in men's basketball.
Well, and think about this, Fardaws Amac was testing the NBA draft waters before he decided to come back to Utah Valley. So, there's all kinds of potential. Not, I don't know. It's fun to watch big guys that can play. Their athleticism, quickness, and the strength too. Both of them are big-bodied, strong. I mean, it was fun. It was a lot of fun to watch these two play, do what they did, set some records. And, I mean, there's not much more you can say about those two. Actually, there's a ton. But for the sake of this broadcast, we're going to just keep it, a little lower. So, anyways, let's move on to number 5. Let me get to it here. It's not loading. Oh, I went too far. Sorry. Number 5. There you go. Easy peasy. CBU women go undefeated through the regular season and into the WAC tournament. 22-0 in the regular season, 24-0 after the WAC tournament. After they beat New Mexico State, and then they beat GCU in the championship game. Fortunately, there was no NCAA tournament for the Lancers because of the transition rule. Very unfortunate there, but that's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles. Jared Olson, really not a fan of that transition rule. I think he had a good saying in the Sports Illustrated article I read that, they should let transition teams play in the NCAA tournament if they earn that right to go, and then divvy up the money to the conference instead of the school taking it, if they're a transition team. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's probably – I mean, he also said that he hopes that the rule gets redressed at some point in the future. But, I mean, even still, they went to the WNIT. They won 2 games. It had to have hurt to sit out the big dance. And, we're talking about the women's side. We got Stephen F. Austin now, who pushed Georgia Tech for that entire first-round game before falling, and they were a 12 seed. It would have been a 12 seed last year. It would have been interesting to see what kind of seed that CBU team had gotten in the tournament, had they been allowed in. I mean, if SFA was a 12 with a couple of P5 games, I'm guessing a 14 or a 15.
Right. Yeah, it would have been interesting to see where they would have been. I think one thing that Jared Olson said in that same Sports Illustrated article was that, in a sense, it was kind of nice to go to the NIT because, you can compete. You're on kind of the same level as some of the teams. Excuse me. Some of the teams are there. Whereas, you go to the NCAA tournament, and who knows, you may just be there one and done or whatnot, So either way, I think he would have taken the NCAA tournament over the NIT any day of the week and twice on Sunday. But, that's just my opinion. So we'll have to ask him when we talk to him again.
Got to remember that for Media Day. What is it, October?
It's October, sometime in October. So we will ask him, make sure. But, yeah, CBU women joined the exclusive club. They were the only team outside a major conference in the last 5 years to start a season 20-0. You want to know who those other schools were? The exclusive club includes UConn, Louisville, Mississippi State, and NC State. That's pretty
heady
company to be part of. So, great season. And here's the crazy part. They might be able to do it again. I don't know that they will because the WAC's getting a little bit more competitive, and there's been some upgrades on the women's side. And
Jared Olson upgraded the schedule by a significant factor.
Yeah, so we'll see what they do this year. But they return everybody from that team. So, I mean, they're loaded again, and it's going to be fun to watch. So we'll see what happens.
For our SFA fans out there, I think there's only one match between the Lancers and the Jacks in the regular season, and it is in Nacogdoches. So hope all of you SFA women's fans get to go out that. I want to say it's a Saturday afternoon game.
That might be one of those games that the Johnson Coliseum should be filled for, because that's probably going to be the game that decides the WAC regular season title. No offense to GCU, who I think is going to be there. That Amara Graham pickup, oh my gosh, just like huge pickup for Molly Miller. That's a talk for another day, though. We got a question. It says, Mike again, whether men's or women's basketball, why isn't WAC teams considered for NIT invites at the end of the year? Well, for the past few years on the men's side, it's usually the regular season champion that wins the WAC tournament. So New Mexico State won it for 3 straight years, won the regular season and the WAC tournament before the 2020 tournament was canceled. So because of that, no other team really had a solid season or a higher net ranking that would put them in the NIT. I mean, had New Mexico State lost in the WAC tournament, the Aggies probably would have been in the NIT because of the WAC regular season champion. And I believe if the regular season champion doesn't win the WAC tournament, they will get an invite to the NIT. That, presuming things, I may be wrong. Somebody may correct me on that, but yeah. On the women's side, the same thing. Before this year, I'm trying to think, Derryl, who's won the WAC regular season title on the women's side before this year.
It was UMKC in 1920, and then they left.
Yeah.
And then it was New Mexico State for a handful of years before that.
Right. And then the Aggies ended up going on and winning the WAC tournament. So
correct, yes.
I mean, that's the reason why. If the regular season champ doesn't win the WAC tournament, then you'll see a WAC team most likely in the NIT. This year, you'll probably see one there, depending on what, Stephen F. Austin or Utah Valley or Seattle or what they do in their non-conference slate. And then in WAC play, I mean, if you have a 20 to 25 win team that takes second place, I would bet there's some kind of invite coming, especially if they get a big win in the non-conference slate. So we'll just have to see if that happens. Let's move on here in our top 10 stories to number 4. So it was a fun season, according to New Mexico State fans. There'll be an asterisk next to the Grand Canyon men's team winning the WAC tournament this year because of all the issues the Aggies had to deal with in the offseason, or not in the offseason, but in season. Having to relocate before the season started to Phoenix, basically practicing at a resort down there in Phoenix, not having a home gym, not being able to play a game at the Pan Am. I mean, it was a wild season for both the men and the women in Las Cruces.
Oh, it absolutely was. I mean, you pluck a team of college kids out of their hometown and ask them to stay in a hotel for, what was it, a month, I think, month and a half?
Yeah.
And not play. And they really didn't play a lot of games in that stretch.
No, they had a bunch. At least the men had a bunch of COVID issues, both on their own side, on the within the program, and with opponents that they were trying to schedule. Because I mean, they went to California and they had games that were canceled because of COVID or because of close contact or contact tracing. I mean, it was crazy.
I seem to remember New Mexico State having a game with UC Riverside on the schedule that I was going to go take in, and I think that got scrapped.
It did, because here's the crazy part. So Mexico State played Cal State Northridge on, I think it was on a Monday, and they were supposed to play UC Riverside a couple days later, and Cal State Northridge had a positive, so UC Riverside didn't want to play New Mexico State because of the whole close contact tracing. It's wild. It was just wild what the Aggies dealt with.
And then you got to think about this too: the cost to the New Mexico taxpayer to put those teams up for basically 2 months.
Yeah, there was. I know.
What was it? 10, 15,000 a day or something like that?
Yeah, but I think if I remember right, Mario Mocha, the AD down there in New Mexico State, him and Bron Cartwright, they worked something out where it was almost like it was through donations and donors that helped pay the cost.
Okay.
So I mean, it was That was a lot of it. So they didn't have to use too much of taxpayer money. I don't even know if they used any. But, I mean, it worked out, and still just weird that, then they get to practice. Both the men and women finally get approved to practice in the Pan Am, but they can't play a game there.
So they have to go to El Paso.
Yeah, like what? I mean, Eastwood High School in El Paso was a generous, generous host for the Aggies, but that's still wild to me that they can practice at their own gym, but they can't play a game in their own gym. I don't know. I just, it is what it is, I guess. That's the way things go. And
as far as high school facilities go, Kyle, that I've been around high school basketball for the better part of the last decade. That is one of the nicer ones I've seen.
Right. It was, I would say it's comparable to some JUCO arenas and facilities. Like, it was a legit gym. Like, it was nice, and but it wasn't the Pan Am. Here's the crazy part, though. New Mexico State still made it to the WAC tournament championship game and still had a shot to go to the NCAA tournament. I'm just saying, like, they put themselves with all those things hanging over their head. They were still right there with a chance to go to the NCAA tournament.
And that's what I think makes last year one of Chris Jans's finest coaching jobs since he took over there.
Well, yeah. And not just Chris Jans, but Brooke Atkinson, too. Like, everything that both the men and the women had to deal with, and to still be, the men made it to the WAC tournament championship.
The women's semis.
The women ran into CBU in the semifinals. I mean, you have to applaud, and not just, like you said, it was probably their best coaching job with all they had to deal with. This isn't to discount what every other team in the WAC had to deal with, because every coach, every staff, every team had to deal with these kind of COVID hiccups, but not quite as severely, at least logistically, as New Mexico State. And that's an easy thing to say, right?
Oh, absolutely. In terms of, days between games, I think UTRGV's women might have an argument for one of the longer layovers. They went about 4 weeks or something like that, right around the first of the year without a game.
Yep, it was, yeah. I know GCU had a stretch of like a month without a game. The men did. Then they had to go to Seattle for 2, and they split up that kind of made it so they weren't going to, if they, if they split with Utah Valley, yeah. Anyways, COVID just wreaked a havoc on everyone, but New Mexico State had to go through the most last season. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Adam, how you doing? I know you've given me a lot of hardship about Dixie State. I'm sorry about that. We love the Trailblazers. They're going to do big things this year. Sorry about Colby Lee. That was kind of a big loss. We'll talk about that on another, stream. This section, this number 3, it probably could have been number 1. I don't know. I might get a little emotional talking about this. That day in February when I woke up from my nap and I had a direct message on Twitter, with the Jeff Goodman tweet about Lou Hill, no words could describe the shock that I felt and the feeling of no way, this is a bad dream type. I mean, he was just coaching the night before. Like, I watched the game. He was right there on the sidelines cheering his guys on, and coaching them up. And, and it wasn't.
It's just one of those things that you never know what curveball you're going to get thrown. And I remember you sent me that. I was at my parents' house. It was my birthday that day. I was at my parents' house for a Super Bowl party, and then I want to say during one of the commercial breaks, I got up, just randomly went to check my messages, and I saw that the tweet from Goodman, and I was like, whoa, man, that puts a kind of damper on things.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. And then I started putting that article together. If you haven't, checked it out, it's pinned on our Twitter profile. It's called A Legacy of Peace and Love. These avoid in the college basketball, world. It's about Lou Hill and what people had to say about him. And, I talked with Todd Simon, the head coach at Southern Utah. And the emotion that he had from talking about his friend. And, when I talked to Jay Stedman and, Luke Mackey, about Lou Hill, I mean, it was just, I don't know. There was so much emotion going through a lot of these guys that I talked to. And the stories that they told, it was just, it's heartbreaking because he shouldn't be gone. He should still be here, should still be coaching. And you just felt for the UTRGV family because the Vaqueros were in great shape before that happened. I don't know. It just, like I said, one of those things you don't believe when you hear the message. And, that's the same thing with GCU forward / guard Oscar Freyer. I mean, when I was told what happened, when I was told, the backstory, everything that, just, it's like, no way. He just played in the NCAA tournament 3 days ago. The young man that had a smile on his face always, who I loved watching play basketball because of his athleticism and his ability to defend people. Like, how do you, I don't know. People will say, well, I saw this, or I shouldn't have done. I'm not. That's out the window. It was just an awful, awful story to even think about having to write, because this is a young man who had his whole life in front of him, who was getting ready to get his degree in a few months, and who everybody loved at GCU. I don't know. You get attached to covering this conference, these players. You get attached to writing about them and talking about them and following them. And, whether it's coaches or players, it's just when bad things happen, it's emotional. I'm not going to lie. It's emotional. And people think I'm being fake. No, I'm not.
No,
Oscar Freyer was one of my favorite players in the WAC, and I'm not going to lie about that.
No, we're two guys that genuinely care about this conference. It's student athletes, it's coaches, the people associated around it, from the commissioner on down. And we like to see everybody around us succeed, the players, the coaches, the student athletes, the media folks around us that'll stop in the WAC here for a bit and then move on to greener pastures. And we'll get to that at the end, I assume, right, Kyle?
Yeah, possibly. We'll see how much time we have. We're coming up. I didn't realize we're coming up on almost 50 minutes right now. So, yeah, I mean, Oscar got his one shining moment. Man, just a. And here's the worst part. Maybe I should have switched these two, so we could have talked about the positive before we talked about, the sad part. Number 2, GCU wins the WAC tournament and goes to their first ever NCAA tournament, since becoming Division I. Bryce Drew, his first year at GCU, does what Dan Marley couldn't do. Maybe that was the change that they needed, was to have a new head coach that could get him over that hump. I know some certain fan base will say that, it was COVID that helped GCU get over the hump. Maybe it was. Either way,
Point being, they did it with the road that was in front of them.
well, and here's the thing, and I'm not trying to take away anything from New Mexico State. New Mexico State was there. New Mexico State had a chance to win that WAC tournament championship and go to the NCAA tournament. GCU just, it seemed like they wanted it a little bit more. That's all. And they got to face Iowa, 2 seed, and really it was the worst defensive game of the season for GCU because Iowa shot the lights out, and it led to the end of that that run, the special season. But it was a great season. 3 days later, it came crashing down a little bit, but GCU did what it needed to do to get to the NCAA tournament, and Bryce Drew led them there. So, they're just kind of reloaded again for this year. So maybe, I don't know if they're going to do it again this year because the WAC is so loaded. Excuse me. But it'll be fun to watch to see what Bryce Drew does. So let's get to number one, probably the biggest story of the year on our site. Biggest, I don't know if it was the biggest story around the country, but at least in terms of the WAC. In January 14th, 2021, the WAC changed and became more stable. I mean, I guess it didn't become more stable till July. In July when they signed everything, made it official. But January 14th, the announcement came. Stephen F. Austin, Sam Houston State, Lamar, Abilene Christian, and Southern Utah were going to be joining the WAC. It brought back football. It stabilized the basketball portion. It made, the additions made all sports better in the WAC. Simply put, it made the WAC better in every sport. And here's the thing, Derryl, that I loved about this expansion, and I think I said it before. They didn't just go out and get cupcakes to join the conference. I mean, Stephen F. Austin, basketball-wise, Stephen F. Austin has had recent success in the NCAA tournament, plus that upset win at number 1 Duke. Abilene Christian is coming off a season where they won. They knocked off Texas in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Sam Houston State, not a scrub. They're the FCS national champs
in football.
From the spring. And the women's team at SFA, they went to the NCAA tournament. It's just like, these aren't scrub teams. These are teams that are instantly going to make the WAC better. The
RPI gets
the additions.
Yeah, the RPI gets better. The Ken ratings get better. The opportunities we'll have for out of conference scheduling get a whole lot better. And that's not just in basketball, but in every sport. But look at the opportunities that the WAC has had for P5 games this year on the women's side. Abilene Christian and K-State was just announced today, come to think of it. CBU has 2 P5 games on their schedule. Was it TCU and Oregon State?
Yep.
Those, I don't know that those games don't come about with the addition of the Texas 4 to the conference. I mean, and there were opportunities. Jared Olson told me on a call that we had last week, and I'm going to start to whip that together, or a couple weeks ago, that there were opportunities out there that just didn't come together for the simple fact that the Lancers had such a successful year that a P5 Dobo didn't want to put his or her team against them.
Right. And that's kind of the life of a mid-major right now is, it's a lose-lose situation for a P6 school because they're supposed to win. And if they don't win, then it's embarrassing for their program and the conference. So, I mean, it makes scheduling difficult. I've talked to numerous coaches in the offseason who have said the same thing, directors of ops that said the same thing, that it is so hard to schedule games right now because nobody wants to play them. Or they're backing out. Sometimes it's COVID issues. Sometimes it's just fear of wanting to play somebody. So, I mean, it is what it is, but the expansion that was announced in January absolutely stabilized this conference. It absolutely brought attention to the Western Athletic Conference that hasn't been there for a while. FCS football in the WAC is going to be awesome, especially as Dixie State and Tarleton State, get out of those transition years. And Southern Utah coming in from the Big Sky, who has had recent success. Their men's basketball team is picked to win the Big Sky this year. I mean, it was such a shrewd move by Jeff Hurd to bring in good schools to join the WAC, not Division II, not NAIA, but schools that are established, schools that are investing in their sports programs and their athletic departments and their teams and their fan bases. I mean, it was a great, great move, and it's going to make this conference better. I'm so excited for November to roll around. And I'm excited to watch this conference in football this season. Soccer-wise, they're going to be very good. Volleyball, they're going to be very good. I mean, it's not just a basketball thing, folks. The whole conference in every sport got better. I know we only have 3 people that are viewing us right now, so they're probably like, who is this guy? He's crazy, but I'm just having some fun.
That's going to be Jeff Hurd's legacy to the WAC, is that he left this conference in a better place than he found it. And as a coach, that's what you want for your program. When you take a job, you're there for 5, 8, 10 years, and then you go on to somewhere else. You want to leave that program better than you found it. It's the same thing at the administrative level. And Jeff Hurd is somebody who got it. He served, 36 years with the WAC when this academic year finishes?
Yeah. 30 plus years.
And this is the move that I think we'll remember him for in about 10 years.
Yep. With all the changes that have gone on in this conference, being on live support the last 2-3 years, I mean, to do what he did, not just him, but his staff, to get it all put together. I mean, it's just a awesome, awesome move. Adam, I want to answer your question. We kind of did it in the first of the show here, but it's going to be huge. I mean, you're going to get some national televised games, but being on the ESPN platforms, a little bit more notoriety. The only thing I'm hoping that happens is that on-demand stays kind of the same as the WAC Digital Network, but I'm not sure that it will. So we'll have to figure that out. But just it's just a great opportunity and a multi-year deal. And as the WAC gets better, maybe there'll be more opportunities for increase, higher number of games on ESPN or ESPN2 and ESPNU, whatever. So it's great for the conference, for the schools, and in all sports, not just basketball, but all sports. So, Derryl, you got any last words here as we kind of shut down? It's been a good hour. We've enjoyed talking, had some questions. Hopefully we can do this more often where more fans join in. It's glad to see your internet worked out this time so that you weren't in and out.
I think we used this last segment to shout out some of our colleagues that have moved on from the WAC on the media side to greener and newer beats. I guess I'll lead with Rachel Vigil from the WAC office, moving on to, 104.3 in Denver?
Yeah, she got a pretty nice gig, though. Like, you can't argue with that gig. She gets to cover basically all the Colorado professional sports teams. Like, that's awesome. And
that's good for her. I'm happy for her.
I mean, I'm gonna miss her because it was fun. We sat at what was it, Latin? Was it 2 years ago? We were sitting at New Mexico State shoot around, just talking about when they came to Orem. It was a WAC game of the week. We've talked on the podcast, on the WAC podcast. Visit with her and the banner back and forth on Twitter. She's just done such a great job for the conference, and she's going to kill it at her new job. And, we're going to miss her. May have to bring her back, a time or two, on the podcast to see how things are going. But yeah, Rachel is one of those we're going to miss. Justin Martinez from the Las Cruces Sun News, who moved on to be the OU beat writer. Can't argue with that.
Andrew McCullough from UTRGV moving on.
Yeah, I mean, these guys loved talking with these guys, loved visiting, loved chatting it up, and the work that they put into was just second to none. Stephen Wagner, we're gonna really ramp it up here, get you talking, and we're gonna visit about New Mexico State basketball as the season gets closer. Who's taking over for Justin Martinez? So looking forward to that. Chris, what? How do you say his name? Ochinsky? Chris, I'm sorry if I botched your name. I hope I don't. Who was covering Dixie State. He's moving on as well. So it's just, there's a lot going on. I think
that covers everybody that's moved on from WAC circles.
Yeah, I think so too. So,
congratulations to everybody. Best of luck in your new gigs, and we'll follow you guys.
Absolutely. But we're looking forward to meeting the new writers of the schools. There's been a lot of interaction so far on Twitter, and it's going to be great. It's going to be fun to interact, to talk, to record podcast episodes, and find out some of the good eats around the WAC, because I'm planning on making a few trips this year. So I'm looking forward to that. I have to now, after writing that stadium article or that arena article that some people really didn't agree with. So I got to go experience a lot of these arenas now. But, everybody, it's a great start. September's upon us, October, and then bam, it's going to be basketball season. So enjoy the football season. Check out our articles on wachoopsdigest.com, all the team previews we put out. Top 10 stories is there. 5 best arenas in the WAC, according to me. Some people disagree with me, obviously, but I also have to experience most of them, because besides GC Arena, the Red Hawk Center, UCCU Center, and the Burns Arena, I haven't experienced anything. So got to get to these other arenas. Derryl, as always, we have a good time. It's always fun. Yeah. I should have put your Twitter thing up there. I needed you to do the little banner that goes across like we did on the Pardon Me Alex live stream. But follow Derryl on Twitter at Derryl, DERRYL_golfer on Twitter. He keeps it, going with all the women's coverage as well as the men's coverage. And follow us on WAC Hoops Digest. Derryl, any other words, last comments, any thoughts?
No. One last congratulations. GCU women's basketball SID Sierra Smith got engaged recently, so congratulations to her and her fiance. We'll see her around some point on the trail.
And our guy Adam Young, New Mexico State play-by-play, the voice of the Aggies in a sense, got married this summer. So congratulations, AY. I'm looking forward to talking with you as the season gets closer. But yeah, good times. Thanks for joining us tonight. Like I said, remember to follow us at wachoopsdigest.com on Twitter. Check out the Facebook page, WAC Hoops Digest on Facebook. But we're going to be here quite a bit on this live stream, maybe once a week, maybe twice a week. I don't know, whatever we feel like, and whatever news comes out. So have a good night, everybody, and thanks for listening.